dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky. This is WYMT Mountain News Weekend Edition.
Good evening, I'm Amelia Lee. It is officially forest fire season here in the mountains, and some folks in Eastern Kentucky are already seeing the effects of this. The WR Castle Fire Rescue Squad in Johnson County is asking folks to not burn anything outside until weather conditions improve. They say that multiple Johnson County fire departments have been out fighting preventable wildland fires. Funding is going to multiple Eastern Kentucky counties. The Hazard Perry County Economic Development Alliance announced in a Facebook post that the Coalfields Regional Economic Development Authority was selected for $4.2 million. This funding comes through the Kentucky Product Development Initiative. Zach Lawrence is the executive director of the Economic Development Alliance. He says this funding will be beneficial to Perry County as well as the surrounding counties.
We kind of all went in together and were able to leverage all of our funding and throw into one bucket. So it really helped us make a larger impact project, going after the $4 million to really leverage against our City of Hazard's water plans.
The City of Hazard says they want to make a second water treatment plant and transmission line feeding. They say this will output 3 million gallons per day of excess water capacity directly to Coalfields Regional Industrial Park. Now it's time to take a look at weather for your evening. We're going to take it on over to meteorologist Megan Dusmal. And Megan, I know it's been a little bit foggy. We've had some other kind of drearier temperatures and weathers. What can we expect today and then even into our working week, since Monday, unfortunately, is tomorrow?
Yes, unfortunately, we are starting that work week back up. But you can look for temperatures starting to be nice and warm compared to what we saw on Friday after that front moved through. We had those mid-60s, but today we saw those mid-70s. And as we go into tomorrow, we'll see the mid to upper 70s. Right now, though, on satellite and radar, we're staying nice and clear from rain. We also just have a little bit of clouds in the area. That partly cloudy vibe that we have will continue into tomorrow as well. And let's take a look at those current temperatures. So again, right now we just had that sunset. Definitely a little bit earlier than it was yesterday. At 5:30 is when we saw that sun starting to set, and those are the temperatures. We're in the 70s range for most of the area, a little bit colder as you're heading out to the Virginia counties. 63 degrees for Wise, 68 for Jonesville, and 61 as you're heading to Grundy. And as we go through the next couple hours, our overnight lows will be just a little bit cooler than that, looking in the 50s for the most part. Some places a little bit warmer, 57 for Hazard, some places a little bit cooler, 40s for our Virginia counties. And as you're heading out through the evening, we'll have some nice and cooling temperatures. Amelia?
All right, Megan, thank you. Some fun weather coming up for Election Day on Tuesday. And polls both nationally and in the battleground states show that the 2024 presidential election will be extremely close. But how close? WYMT's White House correspondent John Decker walks us through the electoral map and shows us what we could possibly see play out on election night.
This is going to be an incredibly close election. National polls show that. The polls in the swing states show that. And what you're going to see with these maps is how close this election is right now and how likely close it will be on election night. Let's look at this very first map right here. You see, I've filled in this map with red for Republican Donald Trump, blue for Democrat Kamala Harris, and you see just filling in these states the way they are likely to go on election night. You see that Harris has a slight lead, 226 to 219, but you also see the states in white. Those are the toss-up states. Those states, it is unknown the way they will turn out on election night, but we have a good sense about which way they may move. And I want to show you how close this election is going to be by going through this map. You see the 7 battleground states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all listed alphabetically. And then next to them, you see the amount of electoral votes assigned to each state based upon their population. These are the states that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have been going to almost on a weekly basis, touching all of them, hoping to convince those undecided voters to sway to their side. Let's go to the next map, and you'll see about what happens if indeed two of those states go for Kamala Harris. These are two states in the so-called blue wall. We're talking about Michigan and Wisconsin. Michigan with 15 electoral college votes, Wisconsin with 10. And if that happens, that's a big if, but if that happens, you see that Harris's total goes up to 251. Remember, the magic number is 270. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris need to get to 270 electoral college votes. And you see, she's closer to 270 than Trump at this point. But remember, easier said than done to get to 270 electoral college votes. Let's go to the next map and you'll see what I'm talking about. The next map, I've colored in this map red and blue, at least 3 of those other battleground states, and you can see how close this election is becoming if indeed this plays out the way I have it right here. What I've done, I've colored in Georgia and its 16 electoral votes for Donald Trump. I've colored in Arizona, its 11 electoral votes for Donald Trump. And lastly, out west, I've colored in blue Nevada's 6 electoral college votes. And then we see how the totals change. 257 Harris, 246 for Donald Trump. Each of them still not at that 270 magic number. And you see there are still 2 states that are colored white. These 2 states, Pennsylvania with 19 electoral college votes, North Carolina with 16. Those 2 states, it's my view, will likely decide who wins. And those are the 2 states that I will pay the most attention to on Tuesday night, because I believe that North Carolina, the Tar Heel state, Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, will decide the 2024 presidential election.
Attorney General Russell Coleman says he's working to protect election integrity with the Election Fraud Hotline. You can now report any suspected election law violation to the Attorney General's Election Fraud Hotline. That number to call is 800-328-VOTE. Or you can submit a complaint online at the Attorney General's office website. The Election Fraud Hotline is always open to receive messages. On Election Day, the hotline will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, Election Day is on Tuesday, and many folks throughout the Commonwealth have already cast their ballots during early voting. 2 major points on the ballot are Amendment 1 and Amendment 2. This is in Kentucky. Political scientist and government professor at Eastern Kentucky University, Ann Sizemar, says that the importance of these 2 amendments is, and she explains what you should do before you vote.
I encourage voters to look before they go to the polling location about Amendment 1 and Amendment 2, because the language that is on the ballot by necessity will be very technical or perhaps very long and may not reflect exactly in clear language like we would think of on a day-to-day human conversation level what those amendments are actually going to do.
She says this is why it is important for voters to do their research beforehand. That's to make sure they are well informed on Election Day. To find your polling location and to see a sample ballot, you can go online to govote.ky.com. Several civic organizations in Kentucky teamed up yesterday to encourage folks to get out and vote. As Maggie Rickerby shows us, they say everyone has a role to play in this election, including those who can't vote themselves.
Groups are working to get more voters out to the polls. The League of Women Voters Kentucky says that the state historically has low voter turnout rates. This year, they want to change that.
That means that the majority of people who are registered to vote are not voting.
The League is part of a bigger coalition called Our People, Our Vote. They've been working together this election cycle to inform the public through canvassing, phone calls, and networking in the community.
We've been reaching out to the people who are infrequent voters and sharing voting information with them. And of course, it's all nonpartisan.
Another civic group working to get folks out to vote is Advocacy-Based Lived Experience, or ABLE. Executive Director Marcus Jackson says the group is made up of volunteers who faced incarceration and addiction. Many have lost their right to vote. Volunteering is a way for them to become civically engaged.
the more that we feel connected to our communities, the less likely we are to create harm in our community, right? So it's that sense of belonging, that purpose that we have, that we go out and we share those things.
The groups work to educate voters, sharing voting locations and times, as well as identification information. Jackson has a message to anyone who thinks their vote doesn't matter.
If we don't vote for the things that we believe in, and we're not casting that ballot, people will never know what we want, and our needs will never be addressed.
Kentucky early voting wrapped up today. The polls will open again on Election Day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. In Lexington, Maggie Rickerby, WKYT.
And here's one more reminder. Election Day is this Tuesday, November 5th. Polls will be open from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening. Once again, you can find election guides, polling locations, and sample ballots at govote.ky.gov. Still to come at 6, it was the perfect weather for reading as folks were flipping through the pages of some good books. We have those details.
And we have some rain in our forecast after a much needed dry period. I'll have more information coming up.